Hola amigos de Wine News TV Puerto Rico, desde el Orrio de B. Suárez. Estoy súper entusiasmado con esta entrevista que voy a hacer con el señor Anthony Mendelsohn, director de ventas para las Américas de Domain Harlan. Anthony, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great to have you here in Puerto Rico. Is this your first time here?
Second time here, first time here for work.
It's not hard. It's not hard to come down, right?
No, I was in Florida before. So
tell me a little bit about you. How did you? You were born and bred in Napa, right?
Yes, I'm born in Napa to a family that's in the wine industry as well. My father was a lawyer in
Same
Napa.
as me.
Same, same exactly. Wine and law, loving them both.
Yeah.
So he moved to Napa just to be involved in the wine industry, and as Napa was really becoming what it is now, and so it's in my blood. And I've also known the Harlan family for most of my life.
Bill and his family.
Bill and his family. Bill, the first generation, and Will, who's the second generation of the Harlan family. He recently stepped into managing director of the entire wine growing domain. He's around my age.
Yeah.
So I joined the family business recently, really to be alongside Will as he starts the second generation.
What makes Bill Harlan such a monumental, consequential figure in Napa? Because, I mean, you hear his name, you read about his name everywhere. He's like, I don't know, when you speak about movies, you speak about George Lucas and Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Like, Bill Harlan is that kind of figure. What makes Bill Harlan the figure he is?
Well, he's truly a visionary as it pertains to where Napa wine industry was when he came around it in the 1980s to where it is now.
Okay.
He's a mentor of mine, so I always love speaking about the impact he's had on me also. But his vision when he came to Napa was with Harlan Estate really to create a first growth of Napa. So thinking about how can he elevate the wine of Napa to be alongside the best wines of the world that were primarily in France at the time. And everything he's done with Harlan Estate, which we'll talk about as well, was in pursuit of that. How can we find the best land, tend it the best way, bring out the best character, and really show everything that Napa can bring to the global wine
Spare
stage.
no expenses, kind
Exactly.
of thing. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit because
sure.
we'll do Harlan later.
Yes.
Yeah, let's go to Bond. What can you tell me about this boat? This is obviously royalty. I mean, these are coveted. These are very hard to come by bottles. We are very privileged at Wine News TV and obviously through El Orrio de Suárez to have this incredible wines. I've had wines from this label. I mean, from this winery before. Never this vintage. This is an amazing vintage. Tell me a little bit about Bond and the story.
Sure. So there's the story of Bond actually starts even prior to Harlan Estate. And when Bill Harlan was first getting introduced to Napa and learning about the industry, he actually started a winery called Maryvale. And Maryvale was a winery that bought grapes from different areas of Napa to make their blend. It wasn't all estate made. And so Bill, through his experience with Maryvale in the 1980s, was able to learn about very specific sites in Napa as he was buying grapes. And he would do this for over a decade working with, and Bob Levy, who was the winemaker at the time. This gave them a unique insight into the various climates and terroirs of Napa. And so he did Maryvale for many years, but he and Bob Levy got together a few years into it and said there are a few specific sites that we're working with that are better than all the rest.
So it was like a laboratory for him of sorts. Like
exactly.
Experimental
phase.
Incredible.
And so they identified these properties that they felt had, where they said they were Grand Cru in quality. That was number one, is we needed to find the best sites in Napa. And second, they had a very unique character. And so Bond is actually a collection of 5 different wines. Okay. This one is called Quella. This was actually the last of the 5 wines that was introduced in the Bond portfolio. The first 2, Melbury and Vicina, were identified in early 1990s, and the first vintage was 1999. So the concept of Bond, hence the name Bond, is bringing together these different terroirs of Napa, each that are Grand Cru in quality and have very unique character, and showing what Napa can provide.
The nose here, let's get into the wine and cheers.
Sure,
Welcome to Puerto Rico, welcome to El Orrio. I mean, the nose is monumental. You get that blackberry licorice, but then you got that minty sort of cedar quality, the graphite.
It does. You get a good graphite quality. It's kind of, so this Quella means aquifer. Okay. That's how the name was selected, and it's all of the Bond wines are 100% Cabernet Sauvignon.
Incredible.
And they're 5 to 10 acres. It's very small production. And what we think makes Quella unique is this kind of ethereal, almost aquifer, blue notes quality. It's Cabernet Sauvignon. You get the very fine tannins and the boldness, but it's also very, it's almost ethereal and round and light and has that great graphite quality.
I love the minerality because you tend to get a lot of fruit in New World wines right off the front, but here you have that minerality, you have that flintiness, that freshness, but also there's that note that is like charcoal and a little bit of bitter chocolate. It is incredibly complex. Obviously, this is a wine that's in its infancy. I mean,
is.
We're,
Yes,
we're drinking
exactly.
a
We're
baby.
drinking a baby,
This
yes.
is a crime in
Yes,
certain parts
yes,
of the world.
yes,
It's
yes.
amazing. This is a delicious wine. What do you suggest in terms of pairing this wine? I mean, because it's very hard not to be sort of the protagonist at the table if you have a Bond Quella. So what do you pair it with?
Well, Quella is it's the least bold expression of Cabernet Sauvignon across all the 5 Bond wines. And that's why we really liked this as the last wine. This was first introduced in 2006, the first vintage. We worked with this land for almost a decade before we introduced it to learn it. But we felt it showed something unique in Napa in that Cabernet Sauvignon can have this lighter, rounder quality, not as bold as some of the other wines that you might have from Napa. So we like pairing this with things that are a bit lighter and can match that. I think it's great with pork or a lighter meat. I also love it in general with like a ragu pasta I've had it with, and it's really nice. So a little bit lighter.
Because you have the acidity. I mean, sometimes
Exactly.
this cabs and the oak treatment, of course, can produce very massive wines that not necessarily tend to be ethereal or gastronomic because they in themselves are powerhouses. But here you have the complexity and the acidity to pair it with food.
Yes.
And last question.
Sure.
We have another interview coming up. But what makes, I mean, in terms of price, this is a super premium wine. What makes this wine so coveted, so sought after?
Yeah. So I think it's two things. First, as I mentioned in the beginning of the story, this is Bill Harlan's, in some ways, the culmination of his legacy in terms of finding these individual sites in Napa that are the best in all of Napa. He's worked with over 100 different sites to find 5, and was working with this land for more than a decade before making it. So this is one of the best sites that Bill Harlan could find in Napa when working with hundreds. So that shows the pedigree of the place.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Second, he works with this land for, and our winemaking team, Corey Empting, our director of wine growing, we work with the land for many years before actually producing it. So that we had 5 years of Quella that we didn't label or sell because we were still learning. And then it's very rare. It's only...
How many bottles are produced?
It's fewer than 500 cases, so it's 5,000 to 6,000 bottles a year of this wine, and that's for the whole globe.
The length, I mean, the finish. It's 2 minutes long. It's incredible, and you get this mintiness, this menthol, this freshness, this camphor at the end. It's an incredible wine. Thank you for this. It's a treat. It's a privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you to Elorrio de Suárez, mi gente. Esto es realeza, esto es un vinazo. Y creo que todos deben darse la oportunidad de probarlo al menos una vez en la vida. Tenemos la gran fortuna de tenerlos disponibles en nuestra bella patria borincana. Gracias a la familia Suárez, al Orrio de Suárez. Salud.
Salud.